Hello everyone, Programmer's Paradise would like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join us today. Today's webinar will cover leveraging CA ERwin Data Profiler in your organization, more maximum data modeling with CA ERwin 7.3. Today's webinar will be hosted by Shubhi Kamakar, who is a Senior Software Engineer here at Programmers. And we'll take a quick look at the agenda. We'll get into who we are. Shubhi's then going to get into the CA ERwin Modeling Suite, as well as the CA ERwin Data Profiler. She's going to do a demo later on that. Then we'll summarize that and get into a Q&A session. So who we are. Programmer's Paradise is a leading e-seller of developer and infrastructure tools. You can see all our offerings on our website, www.programmers.com. Programmers is an elite CA partner. We're actually #1 in the data modeling reseller business. We have a dedicated team of CA sales and engineers, and we get into database modeling and infrastructure design, as well as training and services. We're a leader in delivering CA education. You can also take a look on our website, our database worldview ecosystem. We offer industry-leading tools for your end-to-end database needs, everything from database platform all the way through reporting and mining. So now I'd like to introduce Shubhi Kamakar, again our Senior Software Engineer here at Programmers. So go ahead and take it away, Shubhi.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. And let me go and start with my slides. Give me a minute. I'm just going to go in. Good afternoon, everybody, and this is Shubhi, and we're going to talk, as Mike said, we'll look at modeling suite components very quickly, I promise, and then we move on to Data Profiler and see how Data Profiler actually helps us to look at the data. Each one of you have asked this question either in your minds or you've asked me when we've talked. You've said, Shubhi, my data design looks really good. My data models are world-class. If only my data was as good. Well, data profiling tool is here to help you to look at that data, whether you're looking at the data in your own system, the source system, or you want to do it at the cross-profiling. So let's look at what we have in the suites. We have the data modeler right in the middle, and you know the reason, right? Because now with people not having money, they're saying, wait a minute, rather than going and buying a lot more tools, let me look at all the tools that I have and let me leverage that. So do I have a repository? Yes, I have data elements someplace, but you know what? Data modeler is what I use day to day. I'm using it for my applications. My DAs are using it. My DBAs are using it. I also leverage my data modeling tool for my data warehousing projects, my data governance project, my MDM project. So why not make ERwin Data Modeler right in the middle, as a center, as a heart of everything that I do here? Data modeling now with R7.3, we also give you crystal reports. Why? Because many of you asked for it. You said, well, my data model looks good. Now I want to create lots of reports. We do have data browser that you're used to from previous builds. We also give you report template builder to do the HTML and PDF reports, and now you also have crystal reports. CA ERwin Model Manager, many of you use it. Reason being, it's a great repository for all your models. I can go and do my global search when I want to change a data element, all my models are in my Model Manager. It gives me ability to do my audit trail. Why waste all that time? You've already created your blueprints of your businesses. Take care of it. Control them. Don't let it just, walk away with people. Or, a lot of people go in and make the changes that I don't like. They go and change my font and my color. And you know what? I control my fonts and colors in my models, and that's the template for the business. So don't go and change it. Model Manager allows you that utility. It allows you audit control, version control, change control management. I can roll back. Friday I come in, I make a change. I start running that DDL, and I quickly realize that's not something that I can use. I want to roll it back to the previous version. I can always go to my model manager. It also gives me ability to do, two people can work on the same model at the same time. The model validator allows you to validate the model. So as and when, you wake up one Monday morning and you realize that, hey, you're a data architect, or you're taking care of this particular data model, and you look at each other and go, okay, I know certain principles of data modeling. I know some of the relational databases, but how do I know if this model is right or wrong, or what's wrong in it? Well, Data Model Validator very quickly allows you to do that. We also have a process modeler, and yes, before you guys ask me, it does do swim lanes. Believe it or not, a lot of people are really interested in looking at swim lanes. But Process Modeler gives you a little bit more than just swim lanes. It allows you to look at what is it that you do, how is it that you do it, and then go ahead and look at your data flow diagramming, look at your CRUD matrix, see what is happening. If the customer is calling with that particular call, how many tables have I changing? What is the data that I'm updating? On and on and on. You can look at that process modeler. We also have Model Navigator for those of you who do not want to give ERwin Data Modeler in everybody's hands, but you also want them to be independent at looking at your models. Well, Model Navigator helps, as you can see through the arrow, that you can connect to the model manager. And guess what? Then I can, just go back home without wondering who's using my model, what are they doing to it, because Model Navigator and Model Manager will help me through that. Now, the most important tool that we're talking about today, through Import and Export Bridge, which you all might have used, called Meta Integration Bridge, allows you to pull in all kinds of metadata from everywhere, whether that metadata is from your SAP, whether that metadata is from your SAS tools, whether your SQL Server repositories, Excel, your Visios, all of that metadata can be pulled in. Now, we also go one step beyond that. We have now CA ERwin Data Profiler. Here's a tool. It's a cross-system data profiling tool that can analyze your source system or cross-profiling so that you can do it with your database, your relational databases, or your legacy systems to help ensure that data is consistent, accurate, and properly designed. It'll also allow you to compare live instance data with model metadata to ensure the consistency between design and implementation. And what that allows you to do is, as it goes and profiles and identifies overlapping and unique attributes between systems, it'll also interactively compare record values between different data sources side by side so that you can leverage the technology to understand, first, complete data from my data source, the data quality part, and then also go in and build upon it as I go in and venture and find out other information. So let's look at it as we go in and look at the data profiler. So the data sources, first of all, what Data Profiler allows you to do is bring information from 20 different data sources. So you can go in and then go, what's in your data source to build your data warehouse or your MDM hub? And you know what? A lot of times you're not even there. All you want to do is the data management. You look at your data quality and consistency concerns, and it will allow you to also do that. As you go in and understand your existing environment, it allows you to derive legacy data models for undocumented sources so that it can bring in, and not just, so when you pull in your data, it doesn't have to be just from the relational databases. You can also pull it in from your text files. It'll determine the quality of your data sources, and it'll measure consistency of your data source across different sources. It also gives you overlap information. So I can then go in and say, all right, I have information about employee data or employee ID and employee salary and employee, where the employee is living, or the city where the employees are, and here are my stores. Are there stores where my employees are living? Or are my employees in certain states where my company store doesn't exist? Well, I can go in and get that kind of information also from my model. Now, how does it help me with ERwin? First of all, it gives me my model accuracy. If I created a model, I have a relationship that I think is true, and then I go in and look at the model out there or data out there, I will know what's right and what's wrong. I know. I've looked at my attendee list, and I recognize some of you who have told me that, Shubi, most of our applications are out of the box, and what we do is we're running the out-of-the-box application, And then when we actually go in and create a data model to see if my business rules are met or not, well, here's the best way you can do that. You could also go in and look at your ERwin data as you go and work with it. Now, data profiler and data modeler, how does that work together? So as you go in and you profile your data, you first go in, you select your data sources, you select the tables that you want to pull it in. You also have a choice of looking at sample set. So if you just want to go in and work in the data, people who live in Atlanta, and then employees who are in Atlanta, or customers who are in Atlanta, and then you're going to work on it, you can create your logical sample set so that you can then there's no overlapping. If I know that I'm looking at my one sample set from Atlanta and my one sample set is from Seattle, Washington, so now I can go in and look at that data, and I know there shouldn't be any overlaps because I'm looking at different states, so on and so forth. So once you do that through the data profiler, you can actually take the project itself out of data profiler and pull it into ERwin so that it imports operational models from data profiler, and it gives you, data architect uses existing models, profiling data and overlap information to model data warehouse. All right, and again, I want to reiterate this. Data profiler is not just when you're doing data warehousing or MDM or data governance. You don't even have to use any of these buzzwords or real operational needs. You could be your job may be just to go in and first look at the data quality. You want to know what kind of data do I have trusted sources to even begin any of these projects? Well, data profiler will actually help you to do that. As you go through export discover data sources to CA ERwin data model, and it's done through CWM XML, all right? And so when that, and you saw the MITI bridge before, basically it's export out of the data profiler and it's import into ERwin data model. Now, once you create that data model, you know that we have a very good utility called design by data layers. So if you go through design layers itself, you can now take this model and see where the information is coming from, whether that's the right metadata, whether those are the right relationship, and so on and so forth. As we go in and look at the data profiler architecture quickly, first of all, it has 3 different parts to it, and the parts being Discovery Studio, Discovery Server, and a Discovery Engine. And as you can see here, basically right now the Discovery Studio is the GUI. That's the GUI that you would create your projects from. That's where you would go in and work with your information. There are 2 different data sets that you would have, one for the repository server and one for the staging. And then your Discovery Engine would be basically your management or scheduler, and that's basically just uses your Windows component so that then you can go in and take your data sets and work on it. And you could go through different sources and pull in your information. At present, Discovery, of course, uses the back end is either DB2 or Oracle, and it may be changing in near future, but right now it's DB2 and Oracle. And you have your sources. As I said, you can go in and connect to any of the sources that are out there. If you go in and explain or go in and basically create the project, you would be able to do that. Profiling itself is in different steps. It'll do your column analysis. So the first step, of course, is to go in and start with a project. You create a project, you give it a name. Your project could be a source data project, or it could also be, say, a transformation project. It really doesn't matter as long as you document it well. For what reason you could be using the same data set, but for different reasons because you want to answer different questions. As you go in, and you can create as many data sets as you want in a particular project so that you can then go in and you're on your own to work with it, right? So as you go in and do your column analysis, for example, here, and I will show you how it does it in the model, in the tool itself. I just wanted to reiterate these points as I go through. Sometimes I tend to talk too fast. So when you're looking at this slide, you can see that there's a lot of metadata that you're looking at. There's a lot of statistics you're looking at as well. So as you go in and do the profiling, it does both these things. It does the metadata. It also does the statistics for you. You can go in and look at empty columns that you can ignore. You can also go in and look at constant columns that would be there. And it also allows you you to do discovering and standardizing the numbers, the dates, and other patterns. It just so happens every once in a while that you think it's a certain kind of data, but when you actually look at the data, you realize, there's only 1% that is, that I thought would be alphanumeric. Looks like everything else is alpha or numeric, whatever that case may be. All right. It also allows you to go in and exceptions for the metadata that you may have. So it may go in and say to you that there is an exception in here where it's not abiding by the format that you have. You could also go in and look at value frequencies. So if there is a certain value that's repeating itself, you can go in and see, well, how many places it's unique or it's all over the place. Can also be used to identify basically badly formed and out-of-domain data, all right, because now you're actually going and looking at the data itself. Data profiling tool does something that no other tool out there does automatically. It actually goes in and discovers basically primary and foreign keys. And after it runs its statistics, after it runs its data values, it says, looks like these two tables are related, and I think this is the way that's related. So it doesn't just stop telling you that this relates. It also tells you that looks like customer street address or house number equals customer street address house number in this particular table. So these two tables are then related, and then it gives you a primary and foreign key relationship. Does it stop right there? No. You can always go in and change that. It'll also tell you whether the primary key is unique or not. As you can see it here, 504 values, or 91% of the time it's unique. So what that means also is that you may even have dirty data in there, right? So if you have duplicates in there, it will also go in and tell you, give you that duplicate primary key report that will show you how many places you have redundant data or non-unique key value for use in data cleansing. And what it also does, it allows you to drill it down. So when you're looking at the table, when you're looking at the column and you have concerns, you can always preview the data. So initially, of course, Data Profiler would go in and bring in subset of the values, but as you start working with it, it will pull in more information so that it will, and again, remember, it's not working on your actual data. You do have the staging database. That's where the information comes in so that you can go in and work with it. All right. So it will also allow you to see orphan rows, and when you go in, and you can also go create your own joint key discovery. So if I were to go in and find out that there are these other two keys that I want to work with, I have the ability to add that relationship, and this is where it comes in extremely handy. So it's not just going in and looking at that data and going home. It's actually looking at the data, getting inferences from it, making valuable notations that you can then share with your data analyst, with your ETL people, and then go to that relationship, pull it into ERwin, and then work with it. Now, as you can see, the Data Profiler, because it is so sophisticated in doing data analysis, it comes in, it actually fits in your data analysis phase just before even you go to your ETL tools, before even you decide and look at the transformation, you can do all the analysis here and then make the better, educated guesses or educated steps that you can take going forward as you're going through the primary and foreign key relationship. All right. Data inventory at a high level too, because now that I go in and set up my data and now I have the data set overlapped, I can then go in and look at, well, how many tables do I have? How many columns do I have? Critical data elements. For those of you who have started working with your different systems and you're trying to figure out which is the most trusted column in this table. I thought it was employee ID, but it's not, because there is a problem, at least in the data set here, because what has happened over the years is we have lots of data sets, and knowing that ultimate truth sometimes is difficult. So as I start doing this, as I start going and profiling my data, now I can go in and take an educated guess again and say, well, okay, this looks like my critical data element. This is the one that I would like to take fit for either for my master data management, or as I'm going and creating that data warehouse model, I can pull this information from this particular table because it looks like it's a completely trusted source for me. It also gives me overlapping. So I can then go in and look at the overlap data. So when I have these columns, as you can see, it says that there are 78% of the time that I have an overlapping information and 49% of here. I could also go in and look at exclusive columns. What does exclusive column do for me? Exclusive columns actually allow me to take that information and use it going forward because that's the information that is not anywhere else. All right. So if you're looking at this screen here, there are 3 different data sets. One is from my SAP, one is from my DW, data warehouse, and another one is from my contact DB. And what I could do is as I go through, look at the number of tables and the number of critical data elements, I do have the ability to take this information for cross-system value overlaps. In this screen here, what you're looking at, again, at the overlap, see, as you can see, it goes from your project to data sets to column to primary key to data object and goes all the way to your overlaps. And in this state, it will allow you to overlap different systems for you. It will show you how many unique values you have in a table, and then it'll go in and compare it to the other table in the other data set to show you, what is the information that you can trust, what is the information that's redundant, so that then you can take that educated guess as to which system to use, which information to use going forward. All right, so now it's telling you here, and I like this slide because now it shows to me, if I'm looking at the customer number data, and I have 2 different systems in there. It says customer number seems like a good matching column between SAP and DW, but not between SAP and Contact DB. So what it has done in one step, it actually did that for me. It looked along all of the data sources to tell me what are the matching fields and where they are so that I can then go in and decide my next steps. All right, mark columns that have strong overlaps, and also go in and show you whether you have any nulls or not nulls. It also goes in and allows you to create your critical data elements. All right, so what I want to do at this point is actually go in and look at the data profiling tool itself. All right, so that then you can get the flavor of how it allows you to do. So as you're looking at, and remember, you can send me questions when you're listening to this and you go, she didn't say this, or she didn't mention this, or she was talking too fast, I missed something. Please remind me and I will go in and cover that for you if we have time in the end. All right, so as you start, home is the place where you actually go in and decide what kind of projects you want to create. So this is the first step in the discovery mapping process, right, creating a project. Now, when you create a project, you can specify, so if I'm creating a new project, I can go in, project demo source has been modified. No, don't do that. But once I go in and create a project, first of all, I can specify connections to the source and target tables. I can specify where the location of my text file is. I can look at the connections. I can look at the history. And as you can see here, when I'm looking at the project itself, I can look at and see when it was last modified and if there were any notes. You have to remember that all the processing, analysis, and mapping tasks for a particular set of source and target file, again, are performed in the context of that particular project. So,
QB?
Yes.
We're not seeing your desktop.
Okay, sorry.
That's better.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I should look at that sharing tab. So as you're looking at going forward again, let me go step back. What I was saying, now I've opened my Discovery Studio. It's on my local host. When I start with my project, I have 2 different tabs in here, one for source data discovery and one for transformation discovery. When you purchase Data Profiler, all you get is the source data discovery. You do not get the transformation discovery. That's another product that you have to buy. So through the source data discovery, I can create a project. Once I create a new project, I will have to go in and specify, as I said before, what kind of project is this? It will contain all of the information as to my source tables, my target tables, the location information, and each project basically is completely separate from others because Discovery never modifies the original source tables and files. The same tables and files can be used in multiple projects for you. So you can create a cross-data discovery project or just a source data discovery project, and depending on what you create, you can name it accordingly. So once I go in and create my demo data source, I can then go in and open this particular project. So when I open the project, then it will bring me to the next step where I can go in and run all of the analysis on that project. All right. So as I go in and create, first thing I need to go in and create is create the data sets. All right. So let me go to the next step, which is the data set, and open it up. So setting up the data set in itself that's your first step. As you go in and look at the sets, you need to know what kind of data you're going to use, where you're going to be using that data from. Okay, give me a minute to open it up. And then you can select the data set. You also have a choice whether you are creating a data set from, okay, my WebEx is acting up. All right, there it is. So when I'm looking at my data set, as I said, let me share it again. Okay, sorry about that. So when I'm looking at my data set, I can go in and create a data set by myself. It could be either an operational data set or a data set from data warehouse. When I'm adding a data set, it's very easy. I can go in and select add data set. As I go in and add data set, I do have a choice of selecting whether it's going to be a text file or whether it's going to be something that I'm pulling it in through the relational database. Depending on where you're getting the information from, you need to provide your ODBC JDBC connection so that then the data source can be pulled in. Once you do that, the second step here is to basically go in and pull that information in. As you can see, I have for my W data set that I have all of these tables. Now, you may be looking at the tables and going, why do you have logical tables at the bottom? Well, this is the set that it pulled in, but I do have a choice of taking the set itself and then on the set create my logical tables. For example, if I'm looking into this HQ data set, I could also go in and go through that and decide if I want a data set that gives me specific information in specific areas. All right, so if I were to go into this HQ address, let me go into HQ address. And I could then create a new sample set. Now, do you need sample set for everything? We would suggest not in the beginning. You would only create sample sets if you understand the data that you're working with. When you know the data that you're working with, it's easier to create a sample set because now I do have a choice. I can go in and say, all right, let me preview this data first. All right, and I'm going to call it new sample set. Just go in and call it sample 1. All right, and in sample 1, first, let me actually look at update the count. Let me see what count I have. So it looks like I have 32 rows of information. All right, if I go to preview data here and click on that, it'll give me all of the information that I have in that table. All right, so I can go in and see, and looks like I have few places where it says Atlanta and few places it says Kirkland and so on and so forth. So I could also create a subset of the information as I was talking to you before. And it's very easy. Even a person like me who don't write that much SQL query before, I could do it now and say, hey, HQ address city equals Atlanta. And I could ask it to update the count, at which point it says, I have 4 rows of the data that is all in Atlanta. See how easy it is? Now, I have a sample set for Atlanta. I could do the sample set because for the reason that I'm trying to do this particular project, and I could go in and click OK at this point. When I say OK, what this allows me to do is create a sample set that only has values for the city values that equals Atlanta. All right. And like I said, you do have your choice. If I go in and select this sample set now, that means all of the following analysis will only be done on the Atlanta set as opposed to the full set. All right. Now, when I go to the next step, which is column analysis. Now, this is the most important step for those of us who are using Profiler to take the information from profiling to data model, or even for those of us who are using it to go in and cleanse the data, look at the data quality, all of us will have to go in and run the column analysis so that then it's easier for us to go in and see as it goes through the column analysis. Well, what are the primary foreign keys in here? If I go in and looking at the column analysis, it will also go in and show me what is the metadata, what is the statistical information, and so on and so forth. All right. It runs column analysis on all of these data sources. So if I were to go in and run the steps, basically when I say run next steps or rerun, now in this case I'll have to go in and say rerun the steps. When you run these steps, it will pull in the information, pull in a wizard that will ask me what steps you want me to run and on which tables you want me to run these steps. Suppose you refresh data someplace. You may want to go in and rerun these analysis steps. You also have a choice of creating a new option set where you would then go in and specify whether you want certain statistics to be run or not. All right, and then it's up to you what you would like to run, and as you say run, it will basically run the steps for you. If I were to go to the run next steps, just to show you what the run next step allows you to do, it will run your column analysis, it runs your primary key, foreign key, it runs your data objects, and your overlaps. And as it runs these steps, it also gives the ability to look at the activity. So I can go and then say, well, what kind of information has it done? What is it running? Is there an activity right now? Is it running something that I can go in and look at or not, or what have you? All right. So, and you have a choice. I can always go back to data set and decide that I want to go in and run next steps on all of this. As I go in, though, if I go in and run next steps, it's going to take a few minutes, but it will go in and run the column analysis, primary key, foreign key, data objects, and when I go in and save run, it will start the process for me. And as it runs all of the steps for me, it will lock the project so that I cannot go in and look at it. So it says, project is locked. You cannot make any changes. That's fine. But I want to go in and look at the active tasks that's there. As it goes through the active task, it will tell me what is it that it has started and where it is at this point. So if I go to the column analysis and I expand it, it says it's doing the column matching information for me. It will also go through all of the steps and then show me what's done, what's not done, where it's stopping. And as it goes through it, if there's something that stops or something that it doesn't know or something that it requires me to stop it at that point, it'll give me the trace log and the error log. So if there's something that's missing, I will have to go back and go through the trace log and error log to find out where is it that the things have done, where is it matching. And as you can see, not only it has started my column analysis, it started with the column analysis statistics, it started with column matches, it is running right now my primary key, foreign key, then it's going to go in and run my classification in terms of, what kind of information I have. It'll also go run my data objects to see how the data entities are matching with each other, and then it does the overlap analysis for me. And once it's done, it'll tell me that all of the activities are done and is stopped. So suppose tomorrow, if I was doing this demo and, while I'm talking sometimes, multitasking is difficult, I go in and click on analysis when I'm pulling a DNB file or something, which is huge. Of course, what's going to happen is I'll have to go in and stop it at any given time. But you could do that. You could also stop it. Now, on this screen here, there's a lot of information you can see. First of all, it gives you CDE or critical data element. I can choose my critical data element. I can look at my metadata. I can also look at my statistical data. I do have a choice of selecting either one. I can just go to the bands here and decide that I only want to look at my metadata first. If I do that, basically, it'll show me my metadata for every single column. This is the metadata that a lot of you actually need this metadata from, unknown sources. Well, here's a quick way of doing it. Of course, ERwin does this too, but now this also will give you metadata plus your data at side by side. Now when I'm looking at my metadata, I can then decide, which city it is, and I can look at the native type and say, okay, I think this is a varchar, but looks like the data type that I already have in there is number string, and this is the kind of formatting I have there. So I can now go in and make that judgment. I could also get this information and take this information out to an Excel spreadsheet so that I can then go in and help people. I also have notes field in there, and I'll show you in a minute. Notes field comes in very handy. If I'm looking at the data, as you can see, I have statistical data in there for my metadata and my other data, and when I click OK, let me go in and click it. So now I'm looking at cardinality, and I'm also looking at selectivity. Now when you're looking at it, the cardinality just shows me how many unique values I have there. All right. So and the selectivity will show me how many values are in those columns. So I can then go in and look at the statistics. I do also have a choice of saying that, for this particular table, if I'm looking at W employees table, and I'm looking at the data in there, and it says, okay, for my Social Security number, well, yeah, wonderful. I have 21 rows, and it says the selectivity is 1. That means every single value is unique. Then I could automatically say, okay, it looks like this particular element is my critical data element for me. I could also look at the same thing with my employee ID and so on. And with the same token, I could also go in and say, well, you know what? I have another area where there are redundant values, so I cannot take this basically and use it as a critical data element. I also have a choice of taking this, exporting this grid for my data architects or data analysts to look at it. I can take care of my value frequencies. I could also look at my pattern frequencies for a certain data that I'm looking at. So when I look at this, it's looking at the employee ID, and it's just going to come and show me how many employee IDs I have and how many values I have. Of course, since this data was showing me selectivity of 1, now I know how many places it's the same thing and how many places it's different. And you could do that again. The point here is column analysis was done not just on one data source that you pulled in. The column analysis was done when I clicked that button on all of the data sources that I pulled in. It had actually gone in and done the analysis for me so that I get this kind of information for every single data source. It will go in and look at my metadata, my columns, my cities, all of that information. If you have question at any given time, it says now I have a city information. It says my minimum is Atlanta, my maximum is Tacoma. It also shows me how many times it says mode is Seattle, saying that most of the places I have that value is seen everywhere. I do have a choice also, like I said, to go from preview data at this level and then go in and look at the data and then make that judgment call for the next step. All right, let's move on from here to the primary key, foreign key. So what did I do in the column analysis? I looked at first of all, I looked at metadata, I looked at statistical analysis, I looked at value frequencies, I looked at pattern frequencies and length frequencies. So now I am well equipped to go to the next step, to go in and decide and look at the primary key, foreign key information. You also need to remember as you're going through this, so if I were to go in, let me go through the city and go through the value frequency. Let me click on that because initially I'd done it on employee ID. So when you click on the value frequency, it says 11 places you have the data called Seattle, and if I were to go in and just preview that data, it will pull in those 11 rows for me and show me how many places I have that data in there. So you can order that by, most frequent or however. The limit results to, again, by default, it's the limited to 1,000, but you can go in and pull in more. Just for the demo purpose, we don't want to, go in and start putting with 5,000 rows, and we would be all waiting here to get the data. So, and just to give you, what it's done with every single table. So it looked at HQ address, it looked at HQ department, the employee table, to salaries table, and columns and stores. Now, one place you could also pull in, the information can be pulled in either through relational or you could also pull it in through your text files. When you pull in the text files, you need to know whether that's comma delimited or tab delimited file that you're pulling it in, so that then you can also go in and make the information. You also have a choice of changing the column names if the need be. If you're using this information to create a unified schema later, where you're trying to pull in like a sort of for your master data, you could do that as well. So let's go to the next step, which is primary and foreign key relationship. Now, when you're looking at this data, people ask me, how should we back up? Because it's great that it's working with cross-system, but what if I just want to go and look at this particular schema that I'm working with? Well, you could do that too. This tool will allow you to do, as a data set, you just pull in the information that you have and just work with that particular data set. You can trick the system by using the same data set twice. So basically, it's just going to go in and run the analysis on that data set, or you could just do it with one data set. It won't stop you. Just because it gives you 20 different data sets doesn't mean that you should go in and open up all of those 20 different data sets. All right. So let me go in and open my primary key, foreign key relationships here any minute now. All right. So as it opens this relationship for me, it's looking at the W data set, and it's showing me that there's a relationship between W salaries and W employees, and there's no relationship for the departments. Same thing it'll do with HQ as well. It will look at these tables, and it'll run the relationship for me. When it's doing that, it goes in and assesses a key as it thinks it's a primary key foreign key relationship. And basically what it'll do when it's doing that, it's looking at the information. So right now, I have a relationship here between the HQ stores and HQ department. Basically, it's taken store ID. And if I click on this relationship, and you are all used to ERwin naming standards in a parent and a child, and basically it just says root entity as in parent and child entity as in child. The relationship says that there is a store ID which matches. So when I'm going through a column match between these two, it says that HQ department, right, HQ department has store ID, HQ store has a store ID as well, and then it looks at row hit values and value hit. What does that mean? That means it looks at HQ department and says, okay, HQ department has 12 values, and 12 out of 12 are matching, or 6 out of 6 are matching. So basically what it's telling you now, the selectivity, it says that even though one has 12 and one has 6, all of the 6 in child match with the parent, all right? So that's great. So now I have that relationship in there. Now, I could also be, as a data analyst, when I'm working with this, and this was the thing that I talked about before, I could now go in and look at the foreign key value. So now it says, if I click on this, basically it tells me what is it using. It says HQ store ID equals departments.store ID, and that's why I'm running this and I'm giving you this. Now, if that wasn't the case, you could also go in and do it yourself. If that is the case, then you could just safely get this information out from this particular data set. So let me go in. I think I selected that. So let me select it one more time just to show you. I wanted to show you something. It also gives me ability to see the hits. hits where? Hits in both these tables to see, look at the data value and see which column and which table and what is the data and why is it saying that that's what it matches. Next step. So not just that I can look at the data, I could also infer some other relationship. Suppose now I have a relationship here where it says employees have the addresses, right? So I have employee address in here, which is a city, and I also have store as in city. And suppose I want to know how many stores are in the cities where my employees live. I could by myself go to the arrow mode and actually run a relationship from one table to the other. So basically I'm saying, hey, I want to create a relationship between HQ stores, and this is the inferred relationship that I'm going to do. And then I can safely go in and say, okay, choose a column called city from the store, and also in the address, go in and choose a column called city, and now go in and run the statistics, refresh the statistics, and tell me how does it match. Does it match? Can I really go ahead and have this relationship, or I'm completely wrong at this place? When you do that, you could also go in and ask it to go in and refresh the statistics, at which point it'll give you and it'll say to you that, yes, looks like there are addresses, two different places where the employee address and store address doesn't match. What that means is you still have ability to go in and create those at different places. Now, this is the point which is extremely important for those of you who want to leverage your ERwin data modeler here. So I've done my column analysis. I've looked at my relationships. I've added extra relationship that I wanted to save from the data. I could pull this information out of here into my data modeler. All right. Now, the next step here is the data objects place and what that would do for you for the data objects. I just want to finish this before I move on to the ERwin model here. So I went in and pulled in some information. I went in and pulled the relationships in here. Now, as I move on to the data objects, I can logically take the data objects together and then take this information from my demo here from the Discovery Studio all the way into the ERwin. As I start doing that, it basically creates an XML file that I can then be pulling into ERwin. And like I said, it works with my meta integration bridge. So let's go to the data just to show you what you may have, what you can expect in your data objects. I just worked on the HQ data source, so that's the data source that I want to go into. And when I look at my data source, it says to me that I have employee table and my address and salary as the logical grouping of my model. All right, now the next step is to go to the project and export this entire project as CWM XML. All right, basically what is it going to do? It says it has been modified, save changes before exporting. If you don't say your changes will be discarded, yes, go ahead and save the changes that I just created. It was for demo anyways. So when I save the project, now it'll actually go in and create the file for me as it exports the project. Now I'm just going to go in and export the project into this demo file that I have. And when I click OK, I will essentially see the file for W. I see a separate file for HQ, and I will see separate file for entire demo source project for me. All right, so I've created a file. Now I go back to my ERwin. And when you go back to your ERwin, what you need to remember is to use the meta integration file. All right, so when you go to File, you go File, and then you go to Import from external format. It's very easy. It just basically click, and click at this point. Meta integration, and I don't know how many of you have used that, but Meta integration bridge is a powerful tool that ERwin has as a part of the tool. You don't have to pay any extra. That allows you to pull in metadata from all over the place. So when you get that resistance from other people to give you any metadata, you can actually do it through this. So I'm going to go in and select OMG CWM XMI. And basically, I need to go in and specify which data I'm going to pull in. So I just created it, right? I just went in and did that at 5:21 to 49 p.m. So one of these, so I take this HQ. I say open. all right? It's basically going to go and pull in the CWM XMI into ERwin. So when I go to the destination, do I want the validated XML? Yes, I want it to validate that XML to see if that makes any sense with what I'm using with ERwin XMI. So it will go in, and once it finishes, I will actually see a model. Same like what you guys might have done with Microsoft Excel or Visio when you have the information in these different applications that you want to leverage into ERwin, you could actually pull that information in. So as I go in, now it will go in and have the model ready in ERwin. So it comes in and tells me that it went through it, it created, the model has been successfully exported. I can close this and show you the model. It's going to go through my ODBC. I don't need it right now. And remember, I created, oh, everybody's looking at it and going, logical, there's nothing in there. Obviously, there's nothing in logical, because what it did was it actually created that model for me on the physical side, right? All of the tables are already here, and you go through your format, preferences, and lay out the entire diagram. It's very easy. Basically, so coming back to giving you an overview, first would be going in and making sure that you have the right project, whether it is your source data project or your other project. Either way, you want to create your project first. You want to go in and specify your data source, and from the data source, then you move on to running your relationships. What I'm going to do is go back to my slides at this point. Go back to my presentation. All right, cancel it here and move on. Richard?
Yes, Shubi.
Yeah, can you take over for the slides?
Sure. All right, we're now going to open it up to some Q&A. If anyone out there has any questions, please just type it in the box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Looks like we already have a couple questions here. There's a question here from Vivian Cheng, and that question, Shubi, is, to have the data profiler tool capture the overlap, do these different systems have to use the same table and column names, and what is the logic to capture the overlap?
The logic itself is part of the tool itself. So what it will do, it will use the logic such as the name of the column. It may or may not even look at the name of the column, but it will look at the data value and the data frequency to see if that's the value that is same as the other value over there, and then it'll go in and give you the overlapping. So let me go back to the overlap here. So basically, if I'm going to look at the overlap, say it's for example, it's employee ID and employee ID values. So that's what it'll do. It'll go in and look at all the employee ID values from one table to the other, and then look at the value itself, and then see how many values match from both the columns and give you that as in terms of overlap. And again, it will do that through cross-system analysis.
Okay. If there's any more questions out there, again, please type it in the box in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen there, and we'll wait a couple minutes on that. And we have another question here from Vivian, and she says, so someone has to match the two columns manually using the tool, right?
No, in fact, that's the beauty. You don't have to match it. First part is it will go in and match it itself by just looking at the values. You don't have to do anything. The column analysis is done by the tool itself. It's only when you have to go in, only when you have primary key, foreign key relationship that you want, you're sitting there and going, well, you know, I like this primary key, foreign key relationship, but I would actually go, prefer if you create the relationship between these two different columns. That is when you have to go in and match it yourself. Otherwise, you don't.
Okay, great. Hopefully that answers Vivian's question. Again, if anyone else has any more questions, we'll wait a few more seconds here. All right, I think that's it. Thanks a lot, Shubi. And that concludes the webinar today. And again, for more information, or if you have other questions for Shubi,
I see one more question about what is the price for Data Profiler. And that's a very good question, and I'm sorry to stop you right here, because the Data Profiler, for the pricing that it has, it's the best value you can get. It is the same value as ERwin Data Modeler, so up to, I think it's like $5,000, and that also gives you 1 year of full support for maintenance. Very good tool for the price that you can use. Thank you.
Okay. And again, if anyone has questions going forward or needs a one-on-one briefing with Shubi, they can send an email to ca.erwin@programmers.com. And we do have, looks like there's an Andrew Abrams out there that has another question. If you can type that into the box there, we'll get that answered for you. And there's another question, Shubi. When is the next session? Actually, this session is being recorded, so probably by tomorrow you'll be able to listen to this right on our website, so you can hear a recorded of this webinar that we just completed. But if you want to hear another live session, the next one will be on June 18th. And then the one, What's New in CA ERwin, will be on demand on our website as well. So I don't see any other questions. Again, any other questions, you can email Shubi directly or call us at the numbers listed on your screen there. And again, this is the second in our webinar series. There'll be 4 more after this, 1 a month for the next 4 months. So thanks again, everyone, for taking the time today. Thanks for attending, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.